The President, please be seated. The court is now in session. During today's sessions, the first session will commence with the testimony of witness Saw Siek. Questions continue to be put from counsels for Mr. Nguyen Chia before the other two defense teams. Before that, Mr. Saikolwati is instructed to report to the chamber on the current presence of the parties to the proceedings. Mr. Saikolwati, Mr. President, all the parties to the proceedings are present, except that Mr. Ieng Sary is in his holding cell. Mr. Ieng Sary, through his counsels, asked to waive his right to participate directly in the courtroom for the full day today. His waiver has been submitted to the greffier of the trial chamber. A reserve witness, TCW 338, is in the waiting room at 10. Will be at the waiting room at 10 a.m. Witness has indicated that the witness has no relationship or connection to any of the civil parties admitted before the chamber and to the accused persons. The witness has already taken an oath. Thank you, Mr. President. The President, thank you. The Chamber would like to rule on the request by counsel for Mr. Ieng Sary. The Chamber received the request by Mr. Ieng Sary on the 21st of August 2012, in which Mr. Ieng Sary has stated that he would like to be excused from the courtroom and be allowed to participate or observe the proceedings from his holding cell. His doctor has examined the health condition of Mr. Ieng Sary, and the doctor notes that Mr. Ieng Sary is fatigued, he has lower back pain, and he also has leg pain and cannot remain seated for long or cannot move more frequently. The doctor has asked the chamber to allow Mr. Ieng Sary also to observe the proceedings from the holding cell due to these health reasons. However, the doctor indicates clearly that Mr. Ieng Sary is mentally capable of observing the proceedings from there. In the holding cell, the equipment is available to ensure that Mr. Ieng Sary can observe the proceedings from there. In light of that, the chamber rules that Mr. Ieng Sary is now allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through the video link for the whole day proceedings today. AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the AV is linked to the courtroom to the holding cell so that he can observe the proceedings from there. Without further ado, we would like now to proceed to counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia to pose questions to the witness if they would wish to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to everyone, and especially good morning to you, Madam Saw Siek. Before I start, Madam Saucy, I will tell you that I do not have many questions for you today. I hope that my questions can be concluded in 20 minutes, maybe less, just so you know. Madam Sasik, my first question relates to an interview you had with investigators of the co-investigating judges, and this interview was held on the 24th of March 2009. The prosecutor spoke with you about this interview already. And my question to you today is, do you remember speaking with these investigators?
Response. I did give interviews.
I would like to read to you parts of the transcript of that interview that was held on the 24th of March 2009. And for the record, I will give the ERNs. The document number is D200/6.8, English ERN 00834-863 until 870. Khmer ERN 00833-490 to 497. And the French ERN is 008-35914 to 21. And the passage I want to read to you today can be found on English ERN 008-34867 to 868. And Khmer page numbers are 008-33494 to 95. And as a bit of an introduction, it relates to the policy regarding one Khmer soldier being able to kill 30 Yuan soldiers. That by way of introduction, and I will quote from the transcript. So this is the actual audio recording of the interview. And I quote, first it's the investigator, Mr. Daravan, who says, I quote, "I want to ask you more. During your time working at propaganda, and also during your life during that era, did you ever hear the principle of the Democratic Kampuchea regime about one Khmer Rouge soldier against 30 Yuan soldiers, broadcast in the news?" And then you ask, Madam Sasik, at the time of the fighting, and then the investigator states, "That's right, during the war era. And while working at the Ministry of Propaganda, did you hear this principle being broadcast?" You then answer, and I quote, "I do not remember." The investigator then asks, "Did you ever hear this or hear broadcasts of this principle?" You answer, "I do not remember. I have completely forgotten." The investigator asks you, "But did you ever hear of that? Try to recall it, Aunt." You answer, "I do not remember anything like that. If I did hear of that, I have forgotten." The investigator then asks, "So you do not remember? Do you not remember if it was broadcast or not?" And your answer is, "That's right." So far for quoting from the transcript, and here is my question to you today, Madam Sasik. is it fair to say that in April 2009, when you were interviewed by the investigators of the co-investigating judges, you did not remember whether or not this policy regarding 30 UN soldiers had been broadcast during the DK regime or not? Is it fair to say that in 2009 you had either forgotten or you simply did not know?
Response. In fact, I did give this idea to the investigators because that was part of the statement to be broadcast to the soldiers. It means that one soldier can be against 30 UN soldiers. And I also maintain that I did say I have forgotten because that thing happened a long time ago.
Thank you, Madam Sosik, for that answer. And I would then like to move on to last week, in fact, August 16, when you were questioned by the co-prosecutor on this topic. And can be found, the passages that I'll be reading can be found on page 74 and 75 of the English draft transcripts and page 61 of the Khmer draft transcript. And it is, the prosecutor has asked you about this policy regarding the 30 UN soldiers. And I will quote from the transcripts starting on page 74. I'm quoting the prosecutor. Now, there was a paragraph of this in this document that was read to you by the investigators, which I wanted to discuss with you briefly. And then a little bit further down, the prosecutor quotes the passage, and I quote, "The party instructed that we must try to destroy as many of the enemy as possible and to preserve our forces to the maximum. We were small in number and we had to attack a larger force. Therefore, we had to preserve our forces to the maximum and try to kill as many of the enemy as possible. This was our slogan. In terms of numbers, one of us had to kill 30 Vietnamese. If we could implement that plan, we would certainly win." End of quote. The prosecutor then asks you, "Madam Sasik, do you recall hearing such broadcasts about one Khmer being able to kill 30 Vietnamese?" And your answer, Madam Sasik, was, "I am not clear that I remember this." Madam Sosik, my question to you today is it fair to say that also last week you did not remember whether such broadcasts were conducted over the radio of Democratic Cambodia?
Response. After my testimony, I recollect the interviews I gave a few years ago, and I noted that I did give this statement, and also I heard through radio broadcasts such educational message to the soldiers back then.
Thank you. And the prosecutor also then read to you apart from your earlier statements before the co-investigating judges. And the prosecutor quoted first the question by the investigators. It relates to the paragraph that I just read to you. And I quote, the investigators ask you, was this paragraph the party line? And you answered, it was truly the line. According to my understanding, the term we refers to the senior leaders, among them Pol Pot and his deputies. Question, what is the meaning of the term smash, according to your view? What is the meaning of this propaganda term? Answer, the term smash, if it is for the people, it means to kill. If it is for material, it means to destroy. End of quote. And then the prosecutor asks you last week, is this an accurate statement of what you told the co-investigating judges about that paragraph? And then your answer last week was, yes, I remember stating this, but I was not clear when I answered, but now, with some refreshing of this, I can confirm it. My question to you today, Madam Sasik, the we that is referred to in the paragraph that I just read out to you, who does that refer to, according to you?
Response. The term we here refer to my leaders.
Thank you. I have no further questions for you today, Madam Sasik. I do want to state for the record that we will be asking to have the relevant parts of these interviews by the co-investigating judges transcribed, because it will show clearly, in our opinion, that in fact what happens during these interviews is that certain information is actually fed to the witness, who can now, 3 years later, testify to these issues, even though she did not know about these matters at the time in 2009. I will not go into details as to not complicate the rest of the testimony by Madame Sasik when she's being questioned by my colleagues, but I just want to state it for the record that we will be filing such a request, and it should be filed this week. I thank you.
The President, International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to unduly delay the proceedings. Just as a matter of order, I wanted to raise the issue of making comments such as these in the presence of witnesses. I do think it's inappropriate, and I do think it can tend to suggest to the witness certain assertions with respect to her prior interviews. I think where counsel wished to make applications with respect to prior statements of witnesses, those applications should be made in the absence of witnesses, and in cases such as this, where an announcement is made of an intent to make an application, there's no need for that announcement. But if counsel feel that they need to make it, then they should do so once the witness leaves the courtroom. And for the record, we see nothing wrong with this interview. We think it was a very diligent and detailed interview, and it was entirely appropriate for the investigators to use documents and see if they refresh the witness's memory.
The President, thank you very much. If party wishes to make any statement or file any application concerning the testimony of any witnesses, you are advised to refer to Internal Rules, Rule 92 of the ECCC. In that rule, the statement shall be made in writing. The Chamber would like now to hand over the floor to National Council for Mr. Nunchia. Council Son Arun. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Your Honours. Good morning, witness Saw Siek. I have a few questions. I may take 15 to 20 minutes for the questions. My first question is as follows. Oh, my apologies. I forget to tell you that I am Son Arun, representing Nunchi along with my colleagues. Mrs. Saw Siek, could you tell the court in which year you joined the revolution? Response. I joined the revolution in 1972. Question. How old were you at that time? Response. I was born in 1966. By that calculation, I was about 14 or 15 years old. Question. Who inducted you into the revolution? Response. I was tending cows and I could sing ayai, traditional performance. And eventually, after the coup d'etat, the village chief by the name of Pum in my village came to me and asked if I to establish the district art performance group, and I went through that. Question. You said that the district committee inducted you into the party when you was at your young age. Could you tell the court how were you convinced, or the process of introducing you into the revolution? Do you still recall it? Response. At that time, my village chief did not elaborate in details on this, so there was no proper procedure. But at that time, the local militia group was established, although I did not know who would be the leaders of the group, and I did not know who led the following groups and movement. Question. My question was like this. I'm talking about the instruction, about the message by the village chief. So how convincing was the message that you finally was convinced to join the movement? Response. There was no message to convince us to join the work, the task force, but I was at very young age determined to join the Yige art performance team. I told my mother I would not want to tend cows. I would like to be in the art group. Question. So it is fair to say that whenever people would like to induct you into the art group, then you would be more than happy to join, and you didn't care about the politics behind this. So when the village chief asked you or offered this job, then you voluntarily joined it. Is it fair to say so? Response: yes, it is. Question. This is the second question of mine. Later, you worked at the propaganda ministry after being moved from Daegraham in 1975. You worked for the CPK government under the leadership of Mr. Hu Nam. Is that correct? Response: yes, it is. He was in charge of my department or ministry. Question. How long had you remained with Mr. Hunam? Did you continue working there until the disappearance of Mr. Hunam? Response. I had remained in that propaganda section all along since the liberation of Phnom Penh. But in 1977, I was removed to make picture books at Office 27 near the former Soria Cinema. Question. At that time, did or had Mr. Hunam been removed from the propaganda ministry when you left? Response. Yes, he had. I went to Office 27 under the supervision of Uncle Chai. Question. You worked under the supervision of Minister Hu Nam. Did you know what was or what the reason behind the removal of Mr. Hu Nam at that time? Response. No, I didn't. At that time, there was a meeting to exchange experiences and lessons learned in my section, and we heard the phone was ringing, and he went to pick up the phone, and that's the last moment we saw him. He left on a vehicle. He was seen wearing shoes and a checked scarf. The scarf originally made in Precho, and that's the last time we saw him. Question. After he left, who would be his successor? Response. Puchai or Uncle Chai was his successor. I already stated before the chamber that at the propaganda and education section, these two sections were integrated into one and chaired by Madame Yon Yat. Question. You testified before the chamber that you joined the art group. You sang and danced. Apart from these tasks, were you also instructed to read news or text for radio broadcast? Response. No, I didn't do that. we worked in different sections. They had their own newscasters. And I belong to the art group, and I was not. I did not go high and far enough at school, and I did not have a proper educational background to become newscaster anyway.
So my next question, you testified before this chamber in response to the question by the prosecutor. You said in 1975, following the liberation, the Democratic Cambodia radio broadcast the invasion and aggression by Vietnamese soldiers in many islands, offshore island of Cambodia. And Cambodian people became very angry, and people were encouraged to stand up in defense of their sovereignty. And you responded to that question last week, but can you recall the motivation behind the Ministry of Propaganda, or can you recall what the motivation or the reason behind the propaganda and the information circulated or broadcast on the radio? Response: I do not recall. Question: apart from the art and song, do you still recall whether the Ministry of Propaganda broadcasts anything concerning security matters of the country or the national defense of the country? Response: I am afraid I do not recall. Thank you. I thank you very much, Madam Associate. The defense team for Nuon Chea does not have any further question for you. Thank you very much for your response to our questions. President, next, I hand over the floor to the defense team for Mr. Ieng Sari to put the question to the witness. You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom, and good morning, Madam. I'm Michael Carnavas, along with Mr. Angodam. We represent Mr. Ieng Sari. I just have a few questions. One is a follow-up of a question asked of you by the prosecutor based on something that you've indicated in your statement. So I will refer to the question posed to you by the prosecutor on August 15, 2012. This is at page 80 in English. Khmer is 68, French is 85. You were asked, in the record before the co-investigators, you said that you also had a knowledge of the presence of Mr. Ieng Sari at the location, and that you said Mr. Ieng Sari was working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Would you like to say anything about this? If not, I would like to end now. The period that we're speaking of would have been, by the way, April 17, 1975. And your answer was, no, I didn't see him. I knew of him. So that was your testimony. Now, in your statement, which you gave to the co-investigative judges on March 24, 2009, I'm referring to E3/379, and in particular, page 7 in English, it would be Khmer 00294803. The French is 00385199. In English, 00323327. Here was the question. Were Mr. Pol Pot, Ieng Sary, and Nuon Chea seen? And your answer at the time to the investigators was as follows. They were not seen, but Ieng Sary was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that time. And again, the context, if we were to look in the previous page, is 17 April 1975. And so here's my question, Madam. Can you please explain to us how it is that you made this statement to the co-investigative judges and then signed the document as a summary of your statement, representing that what is in the statement is true, accurate, and complete?
I would like to respond to the question. Actually, the interview was about my travel from Daekrahom back to Phnom Penh, and then the questions whether or not I saw those senior leaders. I told them that I did not see Ieng Sary, Pol Pot, and Khieu Samphan, but I heard from others that Ieng Sary was in charge of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was all I knew at that time. And as for my signature or thumbprint on this testimony, of course, the investigator did read it out, the record of this interview for me, but it took a rather long time to conduct this interview. I felt fatigued and exhausted, so I did not really pay attention to the every detail in the written record of interview. And in that interview, I tried my best to answer to the best of my knowledge to the question posed by the investigators. And I could speak for myself that I knew from my experience, but in any place, any points that I was not clear, I told the investigators that I could not recall it clearly.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. And just to make sure that I understand it, what you're telling us today is what was put down by the investigator for the co-investigative judges and then was read to you was not what you had told them.
The President, Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Your Honours, that's a complete misrepresentation of what the witness just said. She said the interview was read to her and that she tried her best to tell the truth. She listened but may not have caught every part. For the record, in that previous question, and this now follows that, I think, that theme, there's no discrepancy between the OCIJ interview and what the witness said in court, unless I'm missing something. She did not give an inconsistent statement, so I'm not sure where counsel is going with this.
Did you tell the investigators for the co-investigative judges that you saw that Mr. Ingsari was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on April 17, 1975? That's the question. Did you tell that to the investigators at the time?
No, I did not see him. There was no Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was not up and running at that time because it was a empty city. There was no place or office for this ministry. But later on, I learned that he was in charge of Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. Now, my question is, because this is very specific and it goes to the heart of the objection that the prosecution just got excited about, was, did you tell the investigators, not what you knew, but did you tell them that Mr. Ingsari was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on April 17, 1975?
No, I did not mention that on the 17th of April, Mr. Ingsari was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I only said that Mr. Ingsari was in charge of Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
All right. Now let me go back to what I was asking before. Here, the investigators typed up a summary of your interview. Then they read it to you. Then you signed it as being true and accurate and complete. And in the summary it says, but Mr. Ingsari was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that time, meaning 17 April. Can you please explain who made the mistake? Was it you or was it the investigators who typed up the summary and said that this is what you had told them?
The President, witness, please hold on. I note the lead co-lawyer for the civil party is on her feet. You may proceed, counsel.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to raise an objection. It seems to me that this lady has clearly explained that what she said was not that Ingsari was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on 17 April. Her answer is being interpreted and is trying to convince this lady that she must change her way of answering. So I think this is an inappropriate way of putting questions to her.
Mr. President, I'm trying to determine who made the error. Now, the prosecutor stood up and claimed that we should not be making observations in front of the witness. So I don't want to lead the witness. But I think part of the thrust of Counsel for Nuncia's remarks was that these summaries, which some judges may think are actually accurate, complete, and reliable, are anything but that. And that here we have an instance where the witness, and we are grateful, has corrected the statement, but we're trying to point out that there are some irregularities that occurred, which is an issue that might be necessary for us to address at some other point in a global sense. And this is a perfect example, and I wish to find with this witness who made this error, because the investigators drafted this. Then they read it. Then the witness signed it. She's telling us now that she never said this. Somebody made the error. She told us she was fatigued at the time. But my question is, how is it that it got onto the paper? Who made the error?
The President, witness is directed to respond to the question. Response, Mr. President, let me clarify on that point. Actually, I did not see Mr. Ieng Sary at that time, but the investigator might have got it wrong. He actually read it out to me, but I could not catch up with everything. That's why I might have overlooked this portion of the interview, and I apologize for that. Actually, I did not see Mr. Ieng Sary in 17th of April 1975.
Thank you. Now let me ask a couple of questions on some other matters, questions that were posed to you by the judge yesterday. And let me begin by asking you, did you ever attend any standing committee meetings?
No, I never.
Did you ever attend any central committee meetings?
No, I do not recall.
Now, you've told us here today, or in your testimony, that you have some difficulty reading. Can you please tell us whether at the time that you were working there, in the ministry of that you were working in, did they distribute documents from the Central Committee or the Standing Committee for you to analyze, to know exactly what was happening in those committees?
No, they didn't. I do not recall.
Now, one particular question I want to ask you is as follows, and it's on page 109 from yesterday's transcript. In Khmer is page 89. I don't have the French. You were asked the following question. Do you believe that the Om could be worried about information that may give way to criticism, so maybe it would be better to avoid criticism and therefore not transmit information? Were you in a position back then to know what the Oms were thinking of?
No, I was not. I did not analyze anything.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. And we want to thank you for coming here to give your evidence. On behalf of Mr. Ieng Sary, Mr. Angwadom, and I would like to thank you, wish you safe travels and the best of luck. Thank you very much.
The President, Counsel, you may proceed. The defense team for Mr. Khieu Samphan. Counsel Kung Samon. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone. My name is Kung Samon. I am the National Defense Counsel for Mr. Khieu Samphan. I have a few questions to ask you in relation to Mr. Khieu Samphan. First of all, I would like to seek your clarification. In your previous testimony before the chamber, you said that you met Mr. Khieu Samphan in certain ceremonies well before 1975. Can you tell the court about those festivities or ceremonies? What were they? Response. The ceremony in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, was the congratulation ceremony to welcome the soldiers, the victorious soldier in Phnom Penh. Question. Well, I would like to know first about the ceremonies or festivity held before 1975. I would like to make the time frame clear for you. It was before 1975. Response. Before the liberation, I met him. I could not recall the name of the department where I met him, but our art group attended that ceremony to congratulate the New Year, the Khmer New Year. It was 1974 or so. Thank you. Question. How many times did you meet Mr. Kilsampon in those ceremonies before 1975? Response. I met him only once. I met him at that time. He was a guest to that ceremony. Thank you. Question. I just want to know whether I understood it correctly. Do you recall the venue where the ceremony was held? Response. It was somewhere in the jungle, which was far from my base department. I do not recall the name or the location of that department. Question. In the ceremony you mentioned, were there any other activities, for example, propaganda or education also, or was it purely a fun ceremony? Response. No, it was the traditional festivity, and they offer some feast. The feast, that was it. Question. I would like to go back a little bit to the transcript of your testimony. With the investigator of the Office of Co-Investigating Judge, document E3/379. ERN Khmer 00294798. ERN in French 00385193. English 0032332223. In this portion of the interview, you said you were proposed by the party center from the art group from your district. My question to you is, did you know what the party center was? Response. I only noted that that was the hierarchy of the country's administration. There was village, from village to commune, from commune to district and sectors, and then the center stayed on the top. So that was the hierarchical structure, and center must be higher than the sectors or zone.
បាទសូមអរគុណ
Thank you. Question. You said that the center requested that you be transferred. Did you know who from the center made that request? Was the request done in writing? For example, any requesting letter was sent to you and then you were transferred? Response. I was actually selected to join the art group, and through Mr. Tiêu Ol. At that time, Tiêu Ol went to a commune in sector 20. It was Chikla commune. He went there to open the training session of the people over there, and at the conclusion of that training, our art group went to perform for the guests and the public at that times, and he noted that I had some talent in traditional art. So from that time onward, there was an announcement for the recruitment of arts. They selected 2 artists from one district. I could recall that 2 artists were from Svay Rieng province, and from Prey Veng province there were 2 as well, 1 male and 1 female, and I was one of them.
បាទសូមអរគុណ
Thank you. So is that fair to say that you learned the information about the recruitment of artists through Mr. Tiêu Ol? No, it was not the direct recruitment from Mr. Tiêu Ol, but Mr. Tiêu Ol only observed my talent in art, and it was my supposition that it was through him. And the head of the art group in my district introduced me to the art group at the center. They did not want me to stay in that district, and they wanted to transfer me to the center.
បាទសូមអរគុណ
Thank you.
អញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំសូមឲ្យលោកស្រីបញ្ជាក់សារឡើងវិញថា
So just a point of clarification here. You did not know whether or not it was the decision at the center, but you learned about that recruitment from Mr. Tiêu Ol and others. Is that correct? Response. Yes, that is correct. That was my understanding at that time. The recruitment could have been done through Mr. Tiêu Ol, but once again it was my supposition, because he observed my performance and he noted my talent in art, and he was the one who was present there. And my team leader by the name of Puli, he introduced me.
ចូលមកប្រធានបទមួយទៀត
Question. I now would like to move on to another topic on after the 17th of April 1975. You said that you were transferred from B20 based in Stung Trong to Phnom Penh following the news that Phnom Penh was liberated. But before you went to Phnom Penh, you had to stop over at Phnom Atra. And you also said that you saw Mr. Khieu Sampon, among others, were in the one of the jeep car. So is that the correct summaries of what you testified earlier on?
ចាលោកនាងខ្ញុំ
Response. I already testified concerning this before. After the 17th of April 1975, everyone in my group packed and met him there. I would like to emphasize also that a woman who was in the car with him was Comrade Yate and Mull, whose husband was a person by the name Ban. Question. Where were you when you saw him from the jeep? Response. I was in a truck and the jeep was close to the truck and I knew him very well. Question. Do you still recollect the circumstance when you saw him? How far were you from that place? I mean, from the jeep. Response. I perhaps can say that I would be like the president and me here, like from here to the president. It's that distance. Question. Did you see him very clearly? Response. Yes, I did. Very clearly. Question. I would like to ask you a question concerning your trip from Atlaras Mountain into Phnom Penh. You said you stopped over at Atlaras Mountain for 3 nights before you entered Phnom Penh. So to be precisely calculated, you would be in Phnom Penh by the 20th of April 1975. And you said that the group had left an hour earlier. An hour or two, as you indicated. My question is, how did you know that these people had left 1 or 2 hours early? Response. I believed it to be true because I did not see them in the place any longer. Only our groups remained. Question. Did you observe any kind of farewell messages, whether they waved goodbye to you, things like that? Response. I did not take notice of this. I did not pay attention to them very much because I had to rehearse the song of the 17th of April that we had to sing. Thank you, says counsel. My next question will be concerning another topic. This time, I would like to ask you about the recording of your statement, document the 200/6.8 on the last page. I think you perhaps cannot read it. I can read it to you. Khmer an 00833497 In French, 0083 5921. In English, 0083 4870. You were asked by the investigator concerning some leaders like Mr. Ingsari Nunchi and Kyo Sampan, and the question was about Kyo Sampan, and you said Mr. Kyo Sampan was mostly attached to the Samdait. Do you still recall making this statement before the investigators of the court? Response: Yes, I recollect having talked about this. Counsel, I have a few questions concerning this. What do you mean by way of saying he was mostly attached to Samdait? Response: I refer this to his work, that he had to travel a lot to a foreign country, and I heard about this through radio broadcasts. But I did not know in details what he actually did, because normally during visits he would be seen meeting the former king. Question: You said travel outside or abroad. Here you're referring to foreign countries, right? Not just outside the zones. Response: Yes, I refer to a foreign country in this context. Question: Were you talking about the events in 1975 or the events prior to 1975? Response: I was talking about the events after 1975, but immediately after 1975, because during that year the prince came to Cambodia. Counsel, when you said after 1975, it could be 1976. Is that fair to say so? Response: Well, it was before 1975 when I listened to the radio about the king's visit. Question: I would like to also ask you to clarify when you refer to Samdait. Who you refer to? Response: I refer to Samdaita or Prince Norodom Sihanouk. Counsel for Kyo Sampan, I thank you very much indeed, witness, for your responses. I would like to cede the floor to my colleague to proceed with further questions. The President, Counsel, you may now proceed.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning to all the parties. Good morning to you as well, Mrs. Sikh. My name is Antagise. I am International Co-Counsel for Mr. Kyo Sampan. I will also put a few questions to you, but that won't be very long. I would like to start with a statement you made a while ago, responding to a question put to you by my learned colleague, Kanavas. And you made mention of an interview you had with the OCIJ investigators. And you talked about the time when you reread your statements, or to be more precise, the time when your statements were read out to you. And you stated that at that time you were tired and didn't pay attention to all the details. My first question to you on this matter, witness, is as follows. Please, can you tell the chamber how long the interview with the co-investigating investigators last?
Response. I'm afraid I could not remember the exact length of time, but it took place for quite a long time, and the interview had to go on even after lunch.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez si ça...
Do you remember whether that interview lasted a whole day or several days?
Response. I do not remember precisely whether the interview was only conducted in the morning and continued to the afternoon session. I'm sorry.
Madam Witness, perhaps to refresh your memory, I would refer to document E3/379, which is your statement of the 24th of March 2009. And on the first page of that document, in French, the ERN is as follows: 00385, that is 385 192.
En Khmer.
In Khmer, the ERN is 00294 797. And I don't remember the number in English, but it is the first page of the statement. On that first page, we see that the interview started on the 24th of March 2009. And in Khmer, on the last page of that statement, let me give the references. That is the references in Khmer: 00294 814. And on this Khmer version, we find that the interview ended on the 26th of March 2009. Mr. President, let me point out for the record that in French, there is apparently a translation problem, because the date on that French document is the 24th of March, and the ERN in French is 00385 However, witness, since it is the Khmer which is the original, according to the investigators, that interview ended on the 26th of March. Does that ring a bell to you?
Response. I do not recall whether the interview was conducted for the whole day or was conducted only for one morning and in the afternoon and continued to the following day. I just don't remember.
Pas de problème, Madame le témoin.
No problem, Madam Witness. I am only trying to refresh your memory. Nothing to worry about. In any case, we are agreed that that interview was quite long.
Response: Yes.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. In your answers to questions put to you by the co-prosecutor, you said on many occasions with regard to the decision for transfers of people, movements of people, you said that you did not know who was involved in the transfers or who were moved, and that you were informed by your leader. My question to you is as follows. Do you remember whether you were told about such movements during your interview with OCIJ investigators? Did you indeed tell the investigators that you did not know who were the people transferred during the population movements?
Response: I now remember that I have no idea who ordered the evacuation of the population. I was there to see the evacuation, but don't know who was behind it.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you, witness. For the record, I would like to refer the witness to the partial transcript of the audio document D200/6.8. And the ERN in French is as follows: 00835 914. And in English, the ERN is as follows: 00834 863. And in Khmer, the ERN is 00833 490. I would like to specifically quote to the witness the question asked by the investigator, and the reference for this page is 20 minutes and 40 seconds. Investigator Quinnell asked the following question: at the time, did you hear your leader give you the name of the person who had ordered the evacuation of people? And your answer at the time was as follows: no, I did not know. Do you recall making that statement on the 24th of March, 2009?
Response: I don't think I follow your question. Could you repeat it?
I have just read out to you, witness, a part of the audio transcript of the recording of your interview with the OCIJ investigators. And the question that was put to you then was as follows: but at that time, did you hear your chairman say who had ordered the evacuation of the people? And your answer was, no, I did not know. I just wanted you to confirm whether you recall making that statement during your interview of the 24th of March 2009.
Response: in the interview, I was asked questions by the investigators, and I stated that I did not know who was behind the evacuation plan, and I still stand by the position.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I will go into another area of your testimony, and my questions will be a follow-up to what my co-counsel asked. You said you met Mr. Kyo Sampan on the 17th of April 1975 at Eteros, and you confirmed to my co-counsel a while ago that Mr. Kyo Sampan's vehicle, to the best of your recollection, had left before you. My question to you is as follows. Do you know where that vehicle was going?
Response. No, I had no idea where his vehicle would be going to.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. If I were to sum up what you have stated before this chamber over the past few days, after spending three days in Udong, you, along with your artistic troupe, went in the direction of Phnom Penh. You subsequently arrived at the Olympic Stadium, where you spent one night. And thereafter, you arrived at the Ministry of Propaganda. Is this an accurate summary of your itinerary during that period?
Response. I left Chatteras mountain and spent a night at a thatched hut. It took us 4 days before we could reach Phnom Penh, and we spent the whole day staying at the Olympic Stadium. Only in the morning of that, the next morning, that I would be at the propaganda section.
Très bien.
Very well. You stated at the hearing of the 15th of August that you didn't see Mr. Kyo Sampan again after the Eteros Mountains. And then the following day, on the 16th of August, you told the co-prosecutor that you ultimately saw him at the Ministry of Propaganda. I would like you to confirm during what period you saw him again. You arrived at the Ministry of Propaganda after spending the night at the Olympic Stadium. Do you remember how long afterwards you saw Mr. Kyo Sampan at the Ministry of Propaganda? Was it after 1 day, after 2 days, or more days? Do you recall that?
Response. Yes, I remember that after I was there, I saw him, but I did not remain in one place for a long time because I had to look for firewood and some room, and I saw him staying there.
D'accord.
Very well. My question was aimed at having you assess in terms of days. How long it took you after you arrived at the Ministry of Propaganda, you saw Mr. Kyo Sampan? I'm just asking you to give us an idea in terms of days. how long after you arrived at the Ministry of Propaganda you saw Mr. Kyo Sampan?
Response. It was about in the morning at about 8 or 9 a.m. I was at the Ministry of Propaganda and I had to unpack my luggage and looked for firewood and a room to spend the night. And I can say that it was on that day that I saw him, but I saw him in the afternoon already. It was the same day when I reached Phnom Penh when I saw him.
D'accord.
Very well, thank you for that clarification. When you saw him, and you have stated that you were at a certain location, can you tell us where exactly in the Ministry of Propaganda you saw him?
Response. Sure, I can. I saw him in the opposite of studio number 5.
Vous avez précisé, répondant à...
In answer to a question put to you by the co-prosecutor, you specified that you saw him seated on a steel bed. Was the room in which you saw him one of the rooms at the Ministry of Propaganda that was used for housing people at the Ministry of Propaganda?
Response. At the beginning, the place was not yet managed, organized, but it is indeed in the complex of the propaganda ministry, because I learned that he was at the studio hall, which was the bigger room than the other rooms, and later on the young workers were made to stay in another adjacent location, which is about 100 meters from that studio.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez combien de temps?
Do you recall for how long Mr. Kyo Sampan stayed in that room? In an answer to the co-prosecutor's question given a few days ago, you said that you saw him and you did not see him again. My question is, do you know for how long he was at that location?
Response. I do not remember the exact days he remained in the location, but he was there for a few days, 2 to 3 days. Mr. Hunam also left like Mr. Kyo Sampan did. The people who remained were only the young artists.
À l'audience du 15 août,
At the hearing of the 15th of August 2012, you indeed made mention of the presence of Hunim during a period of 3 days at the Ministry of Propaganda, and you specified that Hunim came, and let me quote what you said. It's on page 111 of the transcript in French. Thank you. Regarding the references in all the other languages, and it is at 15 minutes 53 seconds. Regarding Hunim, this is what you stated. initially he came to the propaganda ministry for a day or two, but the place where he was housed was not clean. I don't know where he was staying. That is the part that is of interest to me. You said that it wasn't well organized initially, and you mentioned on that day that the place where he was supposed to be housed was not clean. Is the fact that the room where people were supposed to be housed was not clean was the reason why other people had to go elsewhere, had to be housed elsewhere. Do you know?
Response. I think you were asking about looking for a place where Mr. Hunnam and Kyo Sampon could be housed, or the place for young artists like us. Could you please be more precise on this?
Yes, I was speaking about Hunim and Kyo Sampon.
Response. Mr. Hunnam and Kyo Sampon were there for 3 days, and we also were in the same complex. It was a huge complex. At the beginning, we were close together, but later on, we had some proper place where we could stay separately, and then they left. The President, counsel for Mr. Kyo Sampon, could you advise the chamber how much time would you need to put these questions?
I am almost done. 2 to 3 minutes maybe will allow me to cover all of my questions.
The President, indeed, you may now proceed, and because we are about to adjourn for the morning session. However, since you have just a few more minutes to go, you may proceed, and then we can adjourn for the morning session before we can release the witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, I am almost done. I have a last question. You said that you had seen Mr. Kyo Sampon sitting on a steel bed at the Ministry of Propaganda, and you specified that you did not speak to him. Do you know, however, if he remained within the Ministry of Propaganda during these 3 days?
No, he did not stay there throughout the 3 days. He went there on a temporary basis. It was like other population as well.
I need some clarification here. Let me reformulate my question. You said that he remained at the Ministry of Propaganda for 2 to 3 days. So did you see him every day during these 3 days, or did you only see him once?
No, he stayed there for 3 days, I saw him every day. And as for his meal, people over there prepared food for him, prepare his meal for him. He did not bring his cook along.
Thank you for this clarification, witness. Thank you for your patience, and I am done. Thank you, Mr. President.
The President, thank you very much. Ms. Sosia, your testimony has come to an end now, so you are not required to stay here anymore. You may now return back home to any direction you wish to go. And we would like to thank you very much for spending time and effort responding to the questions by all the parties in response to the summon by the chamber. Your testimony indeed contributes to ascertaining the truth, and we would like to wish you the best of luck and safe trip back home. Court officer is instructed to coordinate with the vessel unit to arrange her transport back home or to any direction she wishes to go. And the chamber wishes to advise the parties and members of the public that following the adjournment this morning, chamber will hear the testimony of another witness, TCW 336. And the first party to put the question to this witness is the prosecution, and followed by the civil party lawyers. And we will now adjourn and resume at 11. The court is now adjourned.